$25 billion. 4 Russian reactors going up in southern Iran. And next week, Putin sits down with Pezeshkian in Kyrgyzstan to speed it all up. Persia and the power to her north, signing paper while the missiles are still warm. That's the map that we're told to watch. And there's a name that flew into Moscow first. You see, 95% of Iran's electricity, it comes from fossil fuel. And that's why Rosatom is building 5 gigawatts in Hormozgan Province. But you and I both know nobody bombs a power plant. Ezekiel 38:5, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. All of them with shield and helmet. Now, Persia is Iran. Nobody seriously argues that one. And this deal survived a U.S.-Israeli offensive that chased Rosatom's people out of Bushehr. So stay with me, because I'm going to read to you what Iran's own nuclear chief just said about letting inspectors near those sites. So Persia and the North, they're setting a date. And one day before that announcement, CIA Director Ratcliffe landed in Moscow on a military transport, unannounced. Now look at the order of it. Washington flies in. The meeting that matters gets scheduled without us. So Iran's ambassador to Russia has announced that President Pezeshkian and Putin are set to meet next week in Kyrgyzstan on the sidelines of the SCO summit. The SCO summit gives both presidents diplomatic cover for what is basically a bilateral crisis management meeting. 2 governments are simultaneously under U.S. economic pressure. Pezeshkian and Putin have a mutual strategic interest in preventing the total financial isolation of Iran, considering Russia is the country's most significant remaining ally and purchaser of Iranian oil. Plans for that meeting come one day after CIA Director Ratcliffe made an unannounced visit to Moscow on a U.S. military transport plane. So Persia and Russia sitting down face to face, and a day before the meeting was announced. The CIA director was on the ground in Moscow. Now watch what the two of them put down on paper. Russia-Iran signing a $2.5 billion deal for new nuclear power plants. That's according to Mir. Are you tracking with me here? We're bombing them. We don't want them to have a nuclear program, but now Russia is investing $2.5 billion for nuclear power plants in Iran. So they're meeting next week to cement the energy alliance. Global oil and gas markets will be watching closely. Could this shift the balance of power? It's $25 billion in nuclear plants. That is not a summit photo op. That's the North wiring itself into Persia for the next 50 years. So here's the breakdown. A $25 billion nuclear handshake, Russia doubles down on Iran's nuclear program. Iranian President Masoud is set to meet Vladimir Putin next week on the sidelines. At the top of the agenda, $25 billion nuclear deal. Do you see what's happening here, folks? The agreement, already signed in October, involves Rosatom building 4 advanced nuclear reactors with a combined 5 gigawatt capacity in Iran's southern Hormozgan Province. It's part of Iranian broader push towards 20 gigawatts of nuclear power. It's more than just energy. For Iran, the deal is about energy security. President Trump is... Think about what this means. President Trump keeps talking about bombing bridges and power plants. Russia steps in to reinforce their nuclear energy ambitions with Iran. $25 billion nuclear plant. President Trump threatens to bomb the power plants. Oh, but those are Russian-backed power plants. Do you see how this could blow out of proportion very quickly. For Iran, the deal is about energy security. The country generates about 95% of its electricity from fossil fuels, with natural gas alone accounting for 90%. For Russia, it's about strengthening its foothold in the region and deepening its strategic partnership with Iran. The project has already survived a U.S.-Israeli military offensive earlier this year, which forced Rosatom to evacuate most of its personnel from that plant. Now, with construction resuming a new reactors plan, Russia is signaling it will not abandon Iran, sanctions or no sanctions. Now, do you remember economic D-Day that was just announced? Any nation that does deals with Iran will face crippling sanctions. So what happens next? What happens with Russia cutting this deal? You see how it's all intertwined? Let's listen to what this commentator has to say.
Iran and Russia just signed a $25 billion deal to build new nuclear plants in Iran, including what is going to be Iran's largest nuclear power plant to date. After months of war and decades of sanctions to try and stop Iran's nuclear program, Putin came in to save the day. And next week, Iranian President Pezeshkian and Russian President Vladimir Putin will be meeting in Kyrgyzstan, where I'm sure they're going to discuss this amongst many other issues. This new deal between Iran's Atomic Energy Association and Russia's Rosatom will oversee the construction of 4 new third-generation nuclear plants. They'll be located in Sarik, Hormozgan Province, and southern Iran. It's worth noting also that the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, was in Moscow yesterday. Word on the street is he was in Russia to pressure President Putin into getting Iran to open up the Strait of Hormuz. It turns out that he flew all that way for nothing, because President Putin didn't even meet with him, and the next day we got a major new announcement between Russia and Iran building more nuclear power plants.
Are you guys tracking with me on this? I certainly hope so. 4 new third-generation reactors built by Rosatom, and there's the Ratcliffe visit again. This reading says the pressure was about the Strait. Vonbury Research, they're expected to meet at the summit. Russia and Iran trying to accelerate implementation of their signed $2.5 billion build-out. This is what happens. If this happens, Iran gets Russian tech, more power capacity, and less reliance on China. Russia gets decades of influence inside Iran's nuclear sector and a role in any future nuclear settlement. Here's the headline. Iran and Russia signed a $25 billion agreement to build 4 nuclear power plants in Iran. So what does each side actually walk away with? The next one lays out the trade. Iran gets the tech, cuts its dependence on China. Russia gets permanent seat in the program. Tehran, Moscow relations accelerated under the Pezeshkian administration, with the sixth Pezeshkian-Putin meeting on the way. Kazem Jalali, Iran's ambassador to Russia, Iran views its relations with Moscow as strategic under President Pezeshkian's administration.
نگاه جمهوری اسلامی ایران به روابط با روسیه نگاه راهبردی است. در دولت جناب آقای دکتر پزشکیان روابط
Now look at how fast Iran and Moscow have pulled together under the agreement. Open source intel, Iran's nuclear chief, the IAEA, cannot request inspection until it draws up a protocol. Iran remains in a wartime situation, and its nuclear sites have not been secured for inspection. So while the North builds the reactors, Tehran is shutting the door on inspectors. Iran's nuclear chief says the IAEA gets nothing until this protocol, and the country is still in a wartime posture. The IAEA chief, Rafael Grossi, says there is no active negotiating channel between Tehran and Washington, although the agency remains in contact with both sides. He added there is no firm evidence of nuclear activity at the Kulang, the underground complex near Natanz. So Iran's nuclear chief says that the IAEA cannot request inspections until it draws up a protocol, because Iran remains in a wartime situation. So read that again, with Ezekiel 38 open right in front of you. Persia armed, Persia shut, Persia signing with the power to her north while she calls herself at war. That's the arrangement interpreters have watched for generations forming on a Tuesday. So ask the IAEA's Rafael Grossi why there's no negotiating channel between Tehran and Washington. He said it himself, no active channel, only contact. That's a door that's closing, folks. So here's the honest part, and I'll say it once because we can tell the difference. This is an alignment, not a fulfillment of prophecy. Rosh, as Russia, is disputed. Togarma, as Turkey, is disputed. Gomer, Sheba, Dedan, not assembled. Now, of course, I'm not setting a date. I'm not calling it done. But Persia deepening their ties with the north while inspectors are locked out, well, that's on the watch list. And it stays right there. So share this because it's not just an energy story. And tell me in the comments what you would watch for next, because watching is the assignment. And I've got a faster way for you to do it with me. When Pezeshkian and Putin shake hands next week, you shouldn't be finding out about it 3 days late from a network that buries it on page 9. Text White House to 844-840-4963. Next News Network carries credentials inside that building. The reporting we can't fit into a broadcast goes straight into your phone daily, past whatever the algorithm feels like showing you. Now, some of you don't want just the intelligence, you want a post. You want to take action. So text Signal to that same number and enlist in the Next News Signal Corps. One board, real assignments, and thousands of patriots pushing stories the legacy press pretends aren't happening.